I'm very pleased to be interviewing Pete Doe, who's Chief Research Officer at Clipped. Thank you for your time.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Well, let's start with your background. How did you get to where you are today?
Wow, where do we begin? I've been in the United States for about 12 years. Most of that time I was at Nielsen, creating data fusion products. Before that I'd been in the UK, as you can tell by the accent I'm sure, where I did a lot of work on currency television audience measurement products, working a lot for the Barb currency over there, but also a lot of data fusion. And it was really data fusion that got me to the US because I took part in an ARF workshop in December 2000 entitled Will Data Fusion Come to the United States? And so I came over for one night and spoke at that workshop, and I met a lady there who I didn't know at the time was to become my wife, and she's an American, a New York girl, so that's what brought me here. And it obviously was great personally, but it was amazing professionally as well for me, because it got me into Nielsen. Nielsen was very much into looking at exploring integrated databases at the time, but it was a bit of a dirty word, the word fusion, in the United States at the beginning of sort of the 2000s, and things have changed a lot since then, and I had a great time at Nielsen helping create that data fusion capability that is now sort of very integrated into the industry and is no longer seen as something that is unusual or unacceptable.
What do you think the state of data fusion is in the United States right now?
Well, first thing I would say is that data fusion means all sorts of different things to different people. What's happened in the last decade is that data has come to us from all angles, not just in research but just generally in the population, and we all walk around with cell phones and that's generating data every second of the day for us. So the need to understand consumers through data exists, but there's a whole load more data that's available, and the need to integrate data to make sense of what consumers are doing is paramount, and it's there for everybody. Several years ago, when life was a lot simpler and you had, say, one database measuring television audiences, you could probably get away with that if all you cared about was TV advertising. But now the world's a lot more complicated than that, and so integration of data is just a fact of life rather than something that's seen as maybe an interesting future development. It's here and now, I would say. So I think there's an acceptance that you have to live with integrated data sets, whereas a few years ago people were questioning that. Then the question arises, well, what does that mean? How do you integrate data sets? What data sets do you integrate? Who owns those data sets? What are the privacy concerns around that? What are the, the coverage and research integrity questions that you might have about it? So it's a very interesting world that we live in now, and as I say, data everywhere and of varying quality and accessibility. So I think we're all trying to make the best we can with all the data that's available to us.
Let's talk a little bit about your work at Nielsen, where you worked with a lot of data. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did there and some of the projects you worked on?
Sure, and I think when I joined Nielsen I thought I'd be working on core audience measurement currency more than I actually did, because that's most of what I'd done in the UK on television audience measurement currency. And I did get involved with that to an extent, but really my main contribution I think in my time at Nielsen was around integration of data, creating fused data sets. The exciting thing for me now at Clipped is using those fused data sets rather than creating them. So using, for example, the MRI fusion to look at advanced targets for TV advertising, and other integrated data sets like Nielsen Buyer Insights, which aggregates credit card data with TV data, and so on. A lot of it in the early days was about winning hearts and minds in the US, because a lot of people had serious doubts about the credibility of data fusion, and I think some of that was because it was seen as a black box to a certain extent. And I think what I always tried to do, and others at Nielsen I think tried to do, was to be as transparent as possible about the good and the bad of the data that was being integrated and methodologies that were being used. And I think that's the only way you can approach research issues is with openness and integrity, and that's that way you will get acceptance. So I think we succeeded in doing that to a large extent, and certainly the industry now makes use of integrated data sets a lot more than it did, say, 10 years ago.
Tell me about Clipped and the work you do there.
Clipped is really exciting because for so long TV has been bought and sold using age and gender, and what we're doing at Clipped is using data, and I was going to use the word programmatic, but the word programmatic can be problematic to a lot of people. So we're bringing automation and data to the buying and selling process, working primarily for the seller, and I think that makes us fairly unique because there's a lot of demand side automation that's happening, but trying to make the best use of the inventory that media owners have in terms of reaching the right people at the right time with the right message. Well, that's a creative issue that we don't get hugely involved with. But I think our overall feeling is that if you can make TV advertising better targeted and more automated, then that's going to be good for the buyer. It's going to be good for the seller because their inventory will be better valued. At the end of the day, it's going to be good for the viewer as well because they're going to see ads that are more relevant to them. So in this ecosystem, everybody should win by using data in a smart way.